Oh, one thing. Are we going to record? Yes.
Okay. Welcome everyone to this ISWA and UNEP joint event. My name is Daniel Turnold and I'm working at the United Nations Environment Program in Osaka at the International Environmental Technology Center, or IETC. As I'm sure you're all aware, today, June 5th, is the World Environment Day. And the theme for 2024 is land restoration, desertification, and drought resilience. Our session today will explore all the issues and opportunities with waste management, which can act as a solution as well for climate adaptation and mitigation, job creation, and resilience enhancement, while also addressing the inherent challenges involved. Today, we are honored to have three distinguished speakers to guide us through these discussions, and I will start by giving a brief introduction to them, as well as a moderator, before I hand over to our first speaker. So, first speaker will be Mr. Carlos Silva Filho. He's the president of ISWA, the International Solid Waste Association, and he has been a profound influencer in the waste management sector since 1999. With his extensive experience developing waste-related regulations and waste plans, communication strategies, he has been on the forefront of advocating for sustainable waste practices globally, and has been very involved in the recent published Global Waste Management Outlook 2024, which was a joint publication between ISWA and UNEP. Our second presenter will be Dr. Jane Gilbert, and Dr. Gilbert is based in the UK and has been involved in waste management and organics recycling sector for over 20 years. She's the former chief executive of the UK Composting Association and the Association for Organics Recycling, and the co-founder of the European Compost Network. She's a member of ISWA and since 2002, and she represents the UK national members, the CIWM. She's currently the chair of Biological Treatment Working Group. She has been an active member in the Task Force on Resource Management and authored the ISWA Circular Economy Report on carbon, nutrients, and soil. And then lastly, our third presenter for today will be Mr. Takehiro Nakamura, who is the head of the before-mentioned International Environmental Technology Center at UNEP. With a career spanning over 3 decades, Mr. Nakamura has been dedicated his expertise to sustainable management of coastal and marine resources, as well as waste management systems, and different approaches into the environmental policies and projects. Lastly, I would also like to introduce the moderator for the session, who will be Aditi Ramola, who is the technical director at ISWA, and she manages the international projects and partnership with the UN, provides assistance to ISWA's working groups, and helps develop innovative projects globally to further strengthen cooperation with ISWA's partners and international organizations. Her skills are particularly focused on solid waste management and environmental issues, and we have worked very closely together in the development of this Global Waste Management Outlook. So thank you for this time, and I will gladly hand over to our first speaker. Over to you, Carlos.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you very much, you all, for joining us today for this, I would say, key webinar on the World Environment Day. As Daniel mentioned, today we celebrate the biggest international day for environment, and it's being celebrated all over the world. And the focus of this year's celebration is land restoration, and to fight against desertification and drought resilience. And the motto of this year's World Environment Day is "Our Land, Our Future." And because we can no longer ignore or minimize the impact of the triple planetary crisis, and sound waste management is key to really go forward and ensure a more sustainable future. So I will share now my screen. Just let me know if you can see it. Is it possible to see the screen? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So what we are, let's say, living today is a wasteful. We are living in a wasteful world. We are living in a world where we generate thousands, billions of tons of waste every year, and this is impacting the whole environment, the whole planet around us, and is also the way we are doing it is also affecting the conditions of the planet. It's leading to what's now known as the triple planetary crisis: the crisis of pollution, the crisis of biodiversity loss, and the crisis of climate change. All of them happening at the same time, all of them threatening humanity and threatening fauna, flora, and the whole planet. But also, on the other hand, if we change the way we are doing things, sound waste management can be instrumental to revert the three crises. But currently, we are not on the right path. According to the Global Waste Management Outlook 2024, mentioned by Daniel as a joint report prepared, developed, and launched jointly by both UNEP and ISVA. In 2020, we generated 2.1 billion tons of municipal waste, and if we keep the trend in 2050, we'll be generating 3.78 billion tons of municipal waste. We are still lacking behind in terms of collection coverage. The global average is 75%, what means that 2.7 billion people lack of this basic service. And we also need to pay attention into the waste composition, what we are generating at our at the household levels. The global average shows us that like more than 50% of the total waste generated in the world is related to food and garden waste. We can see here in this chart that this composition varies considerably in the different regions, and we need to really ensure that our consumption and discarding patterns are not really affecting the way we live in the planet. Because once we have this waste generated, we need to ensure sound management to it. Currently, 62% of the total waste generated in the planet is sent to controlled sites, but unfortunately, we are in the 21st century. We still have 38% of the total waste going to uncontrolled disposal sites, meaning open dumps and open burning.
Carlos?
The direct cost. Yes, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. We can only see your first slide, so we're seeing the presenter view.
Oh,
if you could.
I'm sorry
Yes,
for that.
there we go. Now we're with you.
I'm sorry for that.
Thank you. Sorry for interrupting. Please continue.
Sometimes the computer is kind of like tricky, but hopefully we can manage it like on the manual way. So now you can see the chart with the direct costs.
Yes, it's working now. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So continuing, the direct costs of this current pattern, which can be seen in the current slide, is like really impacting the overall situation, not only in terms of like environmental negative impacts, but also in terms of economics. We can see the direct costs is related to the waste management system currently reaches an amount that surpasses 250 billion US dollars per year. And the externalities of the current waste management system, or the negative impacts of the current waste management system, sums some $243 billion per year. So if we compare these two figures, we can see that the current system, the cost, the externalities costs of the current system is almost the same as the direct costs, which poses a huge impact and let's say a problem, because it leads us to let's say really waste huge amount of money and also have this impact into the environment. So for this report, we needed to consider like what should be the future perspectives, how we should move. One option that we had to analyze was continue with the same trend, the same pattern, which we called waste management as usual. A second perspective, a second scenario was obviously bringing waste under control. So in terms of like stabilizing the waste generation and also improving the waste management system, stopping inadequate disposal and increasing some recycling. And the third scenario was really the more ambitious ones, the circular economy scenario, through which the waste generation is minimized. We can ensure 100% collection for all. We can reach an average recycling rate at the global level of 60%, and all inadequate, uncontrolled disposal measures, activities would be finished by 2050. If we don't change, the impact is huge in terms of wasting our resources, because we keep a limited recycling patterns, and we almost double the inadequate amount of waste that goes to inadequate sites at a very, very high costs. As we can see here, a full net cost of 640 billion US dollars, really a big threat to humanity. If we bring waste under control, considering the direct costs, the externalities, and the gains from recycling, these costs would be reduced by let's say less than half, and reaching $270 billion per year. And then this is really the paradigm shift if we are able to implement a circular economy system instead of having a cost, have a full net gain of more than $100 billion per year. So some key takeaways for today's presentation in terms of really sharing, I would say, a strong message for this World Environment Day of 2024. Improving waste management worldwide, for sure, will require significant investments. By far, it's the most affordable solution to reduce waste and value secondary materials and as a resource. Solutions that we need to implement this paradigm shift from waste as garbage to waste as a resource. It's imperative that we accelerate circular practices with holistic approach. We need to stop managing waste in silos, in small scale, individual solutions, and it's time now to move from the well-known 3Rs to a 3D approach. A 3D approach, meaning that we need to work towards decoupling waste generation from economic growth, detoxifying materials and products, and decarbonizing our economies. In order to reach all of these movement, a global push is needed. We need everybody around the table. We need everybody sharing the same visions, and this is really what is intended that the amalgam that GWMO 2024 intends to be. So our message for today's celebration is like we start really thinking and seriously thinking what footprint will we leave on Earth. So thank you very much, and I look forward to meeting you soon, hopefully at the ISWA 2024 World Congress in Cape Town, South Africa this September. So thank you very much, and let's keep the good work.
Thank you very much, Carlos. So let's go straight to our next speaker, Dr. Gilbert. Please go ahead.
Okay, has that come through?
Yes, we can hear you, and we can see your
it's
slides.
on the full screen as well, yeah?
Correct.
Excellent. Okay. Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody on World Environment Day. And I'm just going to, in the very short time that I've got, just highlight some of the work that I did with ISWA, looking at the benefit to soils of applying compost derived from organic waste. So I'm just going to just quickly take you through what we've done and some of the benefits to soils from improved organic waste management. So just a little bit of background to the Soils Project. We started it in 2018 and completed it in 2020, although some of the bits of work have carried on since then. The work was carried out in conjunction with my colleague Marco Ricci from Italy, who at the time was the chair of the working group on biological treatment and is now the vice chair, with myself, who is now the chair, and with Aditi Ramola as well, whom you've probably met. There were 4 key aspects to the work that we did, and this resulted in 4 separate reports. The first one was looking at the amount of organic waste and the extent of organic waste recycling through composting and anaerobic digestion globally. So we've managed to provide some sort of picture, although we know that a lot has changed and there was a lot where we didn't have data for, but we're now in the process of improving all of that. But it gave us for the first time a good overall idea of what's actually going on globally. The second was a big literature review looking at the benefits of applying compost and anaerobic digestate to soils. What did it do? What were the benefits and some of the disbenefits? The third report looked at 5 separate countries, and we looked at how much organic waste was produced, what the organic waste management practices were, but most importantly, we looked at the soils practices, the state of soils in 5 different countries, and the some of the legislation and some of the drivers that are actually hoping to improve the situation there, and those that weren't. And then finally, we stuck our heads out above the parapet and did our best to actually try to quantify some of the benefits of applying organic waste in the form of compost to soils, and tried very much to quantify that as best we could based on carbon and fertilizer substitution. And these 4 reports are all available on the ISWA website on the Biological Treatment Working Group webpage. So first of all, the first part of the work, how much organic waste is there? But when we're looking at municipal sources, so we're excluding, for example, sewage sludges, and we're excluding a lot of the agricultural wastes because they're very difficult to quantify. But when we're looking at green waste, food waste, things like fruit waste from markets, flower waste. We estimated that in the region of about 1 billion tonnes is produced every year. And we estimated that based on population increases, that's going to increase to about 1.6 billion tonnes a year by 2050. And the 1 billion tonnes is broadly in line as well with the recently published Global Waste Management Outlook that estimated, I think, in the region of 2.1 million tonnes of municipal waste in total is generated annually. So we're talking about 50% of the MSW. Where is it produced? Well, most of the organic waste at the moment, and in particular food waste, is being consumed in cities. Estimates that by 2050, 80% of all the food that will be consumed will be in cities, as we're seeing greater rates of urbanization, coupled with increases in population growth as well. So we know that these organic wastes are going to be increasing in quantity, but also increasing in density in certain parts of the world. And our estimate suggested that about 53% of MSW was organic waste. And at the moment, there are 37 megacities producing municipal waste greater than that currently generated within the European Union. So it just goes to show that we're talking about some very dense populations, but also densely generating organic wastes as well. Currently, according to Global Waste Management Outlook, 38% of waste around the world is not controlled, which was broadly in line with what we estimated as well a few years back. And you can see the photograph on the left-hand side, which I took in India about 8 months ago, where cows rummaging through dumped piles of rubbish to get to the organics is a common sight. If it's not cows, it's pigs or it's goats, sheep. But this is a commonplace in many parts of the world. And the problem there being that it releases, where we're having organic waste just being dumped, it's releasing methane gas as it starts to decompose, but also creating odours, which is an inconvenience to people living near it. It can be a vector for transmission of diseases as well. And based on our estimates as well, only about 12% of organic waste is currently recycled, either through composting, anaerobic digestion, vermicomposting, and increasingly black soldier fly larvae generation as a feedstock for animals, with the majority still being through composting. So even out of the organic waste, the vast majority, 88%, isn't actually being recycled. And in most parts of the world, that's just going into dump sites where there is no liner, where there's no sanitary conditions, releasing huge quantities of methane gas. Increasingly as well, if we look at it, by not collecting food waste separately and recycling that and putting that back onto soil, the other impact of that is that the soils on which we grow our food, with the FAO estimating that 95% of our food is grown on soil, it means that we can't put any of that goodness that has been left over back onto soils. Soils are important globally as they hold about 3 times as much carbon as the atmosphere. They perform essential ecosystem functions, and those functions are absolutely fundamental for us as human beings surviving. But we've got a very poor understanding of what that means to our societies. We're really scratching the surface on starting to understand that. Soils, importantly as well, are important stores of carbon, and it's our natural capital. Therefore, we really do need to start looking at it and looking after soils. When we looked at the 5 countries in the first part of the report, the main threats to soils were really through deforestation and unsustainable land use practices, in particular agricultural practices. And we know that these can be improved if we look back to what our forefathers used to do and the way in which they managed the soils. So composting organic wastes to create compost and put that back onto soils is really just a part of the soil and the carbon cycle. It's what would happen in nature, and it's what our forefathers were doing centuries and millennia ago. None of this is new to us, but as we all start to live in cities and we're just looking solely at disposal, we've lost that connection with the soil. And by creating good quality compost and putting that back onto soil, we're starting to put some of that carbon back onto soil and helping to reduce losses through intensive agricultural activities, desertification as well, through increasing hot weather events and rainfall events as well through climate change. So compost is a partial solution for some of these stresses on our soils. If we're talking about organic waste, recycling them, we can really look at composting to create compost, which can be viewed principally as an organic soil improver, when putting that organic matter back onto soil and increasing soil organic matter levels. Anaerobic digestion, on the other hand, is primarily an energy generation technique, but the digestate that's left over, that is high in available plant nutrients, and that is best viewed as an organic fertilizer. So it's still got a valuable role to play. But if we're talking about the organic matter in soils and reducing desertification, it's the organic matter that's important. Very briefly, the benefits of applying compost to soils are that it increases soil organic carbon content, and that is really the most important part when we're talking about climate change and improving soil function, soil productivity. By increasing the soil organic carbon levels, we're improving water holding capacity, improving soil structure, improving nutrient retention and recycling, and importantly as well, improving the microbiome, the microbes and the invertebrates actually in the soil as well. So it's having a big ecosystem effect as well. And that lot of this was detailed in report 2. So summarizing some of this and the work that we did then to try to quantify the role and the benefits of putting compost onto soil in terms of increasing soil organic carbon content, the 4 per 1,000 initiative, which is being led by the French Department of Ministry of Environment, they have estimated that if globally we increase soil organic carbon levels by 4 per 1,000 centiles, so 0.4% just of agricultural arable land. It's a little unclear sometimes when they talk about it, but I think they're talking about arable land. That is equivalent to balancing out the net greenhouse gas emissions globally on an annual basis. So based on the work that we did to increase the soil organic content by 0.4%, we'd need to apply compost at a rate of 5.2 tonnes per hectare. So it's a lot less than that is actually being used in certain agricultural practices. That will increase the soil organic carbon stocks, the levels by 0.4%, and potentially the potential, if we were to compost all of the organic waste being produced from municipal sources, we would be looking at 96 million hectares that would benefit from this compost. But it's, once again, that is only 6% of total cropland. So cropland, not land used for grazing livestock. This is just purely for growing crops, arable land. So even then, we're still only looking at 6%. So it just goes to show that by putting compost on the soil, it is one part of a much bigger picture and a much bigger solution. But nonetheless, by recycling carbon into compost, organic matter into compost, it does have potential impact to increase just under 100 million hectares of cropland by 0.4% soil organic matter. So finally then as well, some of the benefits as well, when we did the calculations, that we're currently recycling in the region of about 83 million. I suspect since we published a report with increased information, we're probably looking around about 100 million now, but it's still only about 1/10 of the total percentage of bio-waste that is generated every year from municipal sources. By composting it and putting that onto arable land, onto cropland, we can offset about 9 million tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalents every year. And that's a combination of the carbon that's been sequestered in the soil, but also offsetting the emissions due to replacing fertilizers as well, so avoided emissions of using fertilizers. And by feeding the soil, we can actually put on around about 1 million tonnes of nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, NPK, fertilizers every year, with the potential to increase that up to 12 million. So there's quite significant potential to offset manufactured fertilizer production and use. And once again, that has big climate benefits as well. So we can end up with a virtuous cycle here. By improving the management of organic waste through separate collections and recycling, we can significantly reduce the harmful effects that it has and significantly increase the upside and the benefits it has on soil as well. So I've tried to give you a very quick whiz through of some of the things that we did with our working group. And like I said, those 4 reports are there for you to look at and are freely available should you wish to download them. And I'll be happy to answer questions afterwards on this and anything else. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jane. So now let's move on to the final speaker of today, Mr. Takehiro Nakamura. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for operating my slides. Dr. Jane had a kind of really comprehensive picture of the composting related issues, which is quite well organized together with organic waste management at the city level, household level, and sometimes industry level, including agricultural industry. So my presentation is focusing on this, how the organic waste management is really happening or will be happening in the world. Next slide, please. Oh, next slide,
Well,
please.
it isn't working. Wait, I'm going to, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. This is the graph from the Global Waste Management Outlook. In different regions, this is showing the composition of the waste. The green part is actually the organic waste, particularly coming from the food waste. And I'm sorry that the regions indications are very small, but if you really look at this figure, the so-called developing countries have a higher percentage of the organic waste as compared to the total waste generation. And so-called developed countries has a less amount of organic waste in within the whole waste generation. Just really let's circle the graph shows the Sub-Saharan Africa. If you really look at that, 60% of the organic waste is organic waste. So Then we also started really looking at this, and then we tend to really conclude that, there's a lot of problem of the organic waste in Africa, or at the same time, that this the figure is not really showing exactly what's happening in Africa in the organic waste management. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the picture showing the waste situation in Lesotho, one of the African countries, the highland countries in Africa. And this is the picture of the open dump site in Lesotho, in Maseru, the capital city of Lesotho. If you really look at that, there's no organic waste there. Mostly, it's a plastic waste, the textile waste, and then others. So not very much organic waste. I cannot really send the smell of this picture, but there's no smell over there. Next slide, please. So this is a waste collection site in the capital city of Maseru. And the left-hand picture is a waste from the market areas of Maseru. As you can see, there is no organic waste. I also interviewed the market people. And then the only organic waste from the market is the onion peel. So what's happening? That we all believe that organic waste is not really, organic waste management is not really happening in Africa. And based on our interviews with the people, there's already very traditional organic waste management systems in Lesotho. Meaning in the household, they already set aside organic waste, give the organic waste to the animals they keep, or they do the garden composting. So organic waste not coming out of the household. So if you really look at the recycling rate, Dr. Gilbert also mentioned about that. Recycling rate is very low because the organic waste not coming to the municipal solid waste. So this picture of the 60% of the waste is the organic waste in Africa. This also gives a really strange picture that in the kind of really local situation, there's a very, very good organic waste management systems happening in the local situation. So some of the figures really showing kind of really interesting in the contrast between the kind of really regional level or global level picture together with kind of really local level or actual practices of the organic waste. Can you go back to the slide, two slides back? Yes. Oh, sorry. Can you go forward? Can you go forward? And next slide. Yes. This is the kind of really the publication that UNEP has really issued in 2020. We just had a compilation of the technologies on the composting. So the publication is really introducing different composting technologies that should be available and applicable to the developing country situations. It also tried to really show how the composting can improve the soil conditions, and also try to really show that the preconditions for adapting the composting technologies, particularly from the social related issues, capacity related issues, financial conditions for applying those technologies. Next slide, please. And just coming to really the question about the composting, when we try to really push the composting to the waste management systems, many people ask, how do we really do that? It's a composting is a good business if this is really benefiting people, benefiting agricultural activities. And we also try to really show that some type of really business model when we try to really push the composting to the developing country situation. I think the issue here is food consumption is largely happening in the urban areas. I think that Dr. Gilbert was also talking about urbanization and food waste generation. Actual compost use is actually happening in the rural area, particularly in the agricultural areas. And most probably, composting is happening in the peri-urban areas because composting cannot happen in the urban areas. And in terms of the actual cost to really carry out the composting business, transportation costs are the highest among the cost items. That means somebody has to really bring the food waste to the composting site, from the composting site to the rural areas, and agricultural products in return coming back to the urban areas. So we started really seeing that is there really the good business to really do that? And then who will invest in this kind of really composting business? And then in doing that, I think the key factors are who is going to really certify that this is organic fertilizers, and who recognize that this is organic fertilizers as compared to the chemical fertilizers. Organic vegetables, is there a market for that? If there is no market, the people will choose the lower the cost of vegetables based on the chemical fertilizers. Next slide, please. In order to really answer those questions, we also try to really help several the small scale the pilot activities. The left one is that we carried out the composting activities in Bhutan, Mongolia, and Nepal. It's a very small scale, the composting activities. And in terms of climate change benefit, in Bhutan, we just really generated 0.1 ton, the carbon dioxide equivalent, Mongolia 1.8 tons. As Dr. Gilbert also mentioned, that there was a really specific the climate change benefit we calculated, although we couldn't sell the carbon credit to any markets. The right-hand one is we just really try whether actual organic waste can be a really good business. So we try to really establish a business model. We try to establish a financial mechanism to really bring in public and private investment into this business development. And unfortunately, this has not been really put in practice yet, but there was quite a lot of discussion about the good business model for the composting business. Last slide, please. So this is my last slide. Organic waste is for climate change benefits, agricultural and then soil benefits, and also energy benefits, as well as other environmental benefit. I think that all these are already covered by Dr. Gilbert's the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nakamura. And with that, we have finished the presentation session of this event. So I will hand it over to Aditi, who will moderate the next session. Over to you, Aditi.
Thank you so much, speakers, and Daniel as well. We have a very short time for Q&A now because we want to end the webinar on time because of other meetings. But note for all the participants, if you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat box and we'll address them as we find them. But I wanted to have this last part of the webinar as just like a chit chat or a discussion session between all the speakers because Carlos presented the global findings from our outlook that came out 2 months ago. And then Jane presented the work of ISWA and Takeru-san presented the work that UNEP is doing on this. So just to start out, I wanted Carlos to go back to you and ask you, what specific contributions is the GWMO 2024 telling our sector to make to address, of course, the triple planetary crisis that you mentioned, And also, particularly since the theme of the day is, combating desertification, what do we say about that specifically too?
Thank you, Aditi. First of all, I'd like to congratulate both Dr. Jane and Takehiro-san for the excellent presentations, showing how important is that we manage adequately organic waste as really to improve soil quality and prevent further degradation. And coming back to the global waste management outlook, I would say first thing is the assessment made in the report that shows that we can no longer ignore or minimize the impact of the triple planetary crisis. So this is one thing. Like the current system is it's exhausted. It's no longer viable, and we show analyzing the different scenarios that a sustainable future depends critically on bringing, let's say, a more advanced actions and in terms of like with environmental concerns as top priorities. So this is one thing. Another thing I would say, it's also important because we are like celebrating the World Environment Day. It's also important to recall that in 2022, the United Nations recognized that the right for a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is a human right. So it's also something that this report brings. And I would say, last but not least, the report highlights that the importance of sound waste management as a key to ensure this basic human right. As vital to, let's say, mitigate the triple planetary crisis, and a key to really have these commitments by the different sectors. I think that this is the most important message, that we all need to work together. It's not like a waste sector agenda. It's a global agenda. It's like everyone's agenda. And I think that this is the important message from the global waste management outlook. Otherwise, if we don't cooperate, if we are not all engaged, we won't be able to win this battle.
Thank you, Carlos. Completely agree with you. And I want to move to Takehiro-san because I love the presentation where you presented the case of Lesotho, and you said that you didn't find organic waste in their stream because they're already valorizing it by giving it to animals and doing composting and so on. So are you taking these findings and recommendations at the UNEP level and passing it on to other countries? And how are you doing that? You talked about a few projects that are being done in other parts of the world, very tiny ones. And just wanting to add to that question, because we have something in the chat box. Let me just quickly see. There's a Q&A chat box where people have asked, and a person here has written, other than Lesotho, did you consider other countries or engaged with cities in the southern region? It's interesting that in Lesotho, there's no organic waste in their waste stream. And this person is working with cities in South Africa. And from where they have realized that in most cities, organic waste is 50%. And well, just to start the answer and then passing it on to you, Takehiro-san, we've noticed very similar results that you mentioned about Lesotho in southern parts of India, where we're working in the villages. We didn't see too much of organic waste because they were doing exactly the same thing, animal feed, composting, and doing other things with it. The 50% of the waste that's organic, we see more in urbanized regions, and I'm sure you're going to say the same thing. So I just wanted to corroborate what you've noticed in Lesotho and then pass on the question to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. As exactly the Aditi, you said that kind of really global report is really hiding this kind of really important the issue about the kind of really local level organic waste. And I also found the similar exercise and then practices in Comoros, and I understand that Eswatini is also carrying out such a system. But perhaps you can really see that those countries that do not have a really rapid urbanization. So they can really have the kind of really space to really continue their own traditional the waste management system at the household level and the municipal level. And having said that, to answer your question, that we consider Lesotho case or Comoros case, and then perhaps your Southern Indian case as a kind of really good practices about kind of really organic waste management, which is not really appearing easily in our global reports, such as the Global Waste Management Outlook. And we started to really try to really correct such good practices, and then we try to establish a kind of really better lessons learned or good practices type information sharing system in the coming years, and possibly working with ISWA. Thank you.
Thank you, Takeru-san. We're running out of time, but I want to ask Jane a question that she's not going to be surprised getting from me. I think every time I have Jane on a webinar, I'm always going to ask her about the quality of compost and digestate, and what are the practices, the best practices globally that you've seen, Jane, for ensuring that these products, effectively combat desertification and that the quality is maintained. Yeah, just if you can shed light on it as per usual.
Yeah, thanks, Aditi. It's an important issue. Essentially, the best way to recycle organic waste is by keeping the organic waste as clean as possible. And to do that, you need to make sure that it's not going to be mixed with any other wastes or other things that can contaminate it. In particular, plastics are a real problem the world over, especially single-use plastics film. And once they get into the organic stream, it's very difficult to remove them as well. So the best way is to prevent it at source and to keep the organic separate. Increasingly as well, plastics and other products that we use globally have chemicals in them, and some of these are very persistent. And the main ones at the moment that are really causing concerns are called PFAS, they're perfluoro alkyl substances. Yeah, so these are what are termed forever chemicals, and they will hang around, and they will also bioaccumulate up food chains as well. So it's important that if we're going to be putting organic matter and compost or even digestate back onto soils, and in particular soils that we are using to grow food or to graze animals on which we grow our food, that we keep the quality as high as possible. So this means only recycling organic waste that have been kept separate from other wastes. The only real way that mixed waste composting is going to have any benefit is by using that as a landfill cover or a daily cover on dump sites to help reduce odour emissions and also reduce some of the methane emissions coming from it as well. So that is one aspect, but putting it back onto benefit soils, it's very important that you only recycle clean organic wastes.
Thank you, Jane. I do see another question on the chat talking about compost machines. In the interest of time, we'll just take it on the chat itself, if you can look at it. But I would like to start wrapping up the webinar because, yeah, the time is up. And I would like to give each speaker perhaps just a minute each to just wrap up and say if there are any key takeaway messages on this World Environment Day, specifically a case for organic waste management, and how we can combat desertification and also the triple planetary crisis. So starting with Carlos, Takeru-san, and then finally Jane. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditi. It has been a pleasure to be here with you all today for this webinar celebrating the World Environment Day. And as a key message, I would say, let's go out and play our role and ensure that in our villages, communities, cities, we have adequate waste management and start with any type of organics diversion or recovery in order to really ensure that we all live in a healthy, clean, and sustainable planet.
Thank you, Carlos. Takeru-san?
Yeah, thank you very much. The organic waste is always with us. is coming our food. It's always with individuals, always with us. If you take kind of really action at the individual level, household level, we can create lots of environmental benefits. So this is my message about World Environment Day.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping it short and sweet, Jane.
Yes, I think my take-home message here is manage the organic fraction as much as you can, focus on that, recycle it as best you can, and it doesn't have to be big centralized systems. They can be small decentralized systems, backyard systems, as Mr. Takahiro-san has just said. They can engage communities, and they can also be much bigger and engage farmers as well. So there's a number of different models that can be tailored to very specific situations. Produce good quality materials, good quality compost, and you are maximizing the benefits to soils, maximizing and helping to promote food security, reducing desertification, whilst at the same time significantly reducing methane emissions from dump sites as well. So it's very much a win-win-win situation.
Thank you, Jane. That was great. I completely agree and concur because organic waste is such a versatile material. We have so many solutions that exist already, proven solutions, and you can play around with the scale and the decentralization versus centralization questions and so on, community level composts or biogas plants or black soldier fly larvae and so on and so forth. So there's so many solutions that exist, and it always has to be context specific. So thank you for your answer as well. With this, we'd like to close the webinar. I really want to thank Carlos, Takahiro-san, and Jane for taking the time to be with us today. And there are lots of good resources out there that ISWA's published with UNEP. And there's also been a launch of the Global Resources Outlook that came right after the Global Waste Management Outlook. And both of these reports, make a case for better waste management, specifically better organic waste management to bring back the nutrients into our soils. So we hope that you learned, it was exciting for you to join our webinar today for this World Environment Day, and we wish you a lovely remaining day. Thank you all.